Your host is back. Your host is back. Bubesi Mphathi Umhlaba is here. We're back with another episode, once again, of Football is a Religion. So we are returning with Champions League action, right? And I hope all of y'all are excited at home. I know the world always has its eyes glued to their screens during this time of the year because we know Uefa, football's greatest club competition is back, the UEFA Champions League. So before we even get into the round of 16 clashes, right? Remember Copenhagen this week. We're going to see Copenhagen taking on Manchester City in the first leg at the Parken Stadium in Copenhagen, Denmark. And we're also going to be seeing Leipzig take on 14-time champions Real Madrid at the Red Bull Arena in Germany, in Leipzig, obviously. And then on Wednesday evening, we're going to see Paris Saint-Germain taking on Real Sociedad at the Parc des Princes. And then we're also going to see another clash between Lazio taking on Bayern Munich, right, at the Stadio Olimpico in Italy's capital, Rome. So, first things first, ladies and gentlemen. First things first. Okay. Before we get into those clashes, right, those mouth-watering clashes, I want us to look at the records that have been set in the round of 16. There's been a lot of records that have been set in the round of 16 of the UEFA Champions League. Obviously, we know that Cristiano Ronaldo as well as Lionel Messi are the players that actually, lead the way when it comes to like the records that have always been set at this stage of the competition. So look, we start with the first thing, right? First question comes to mind. Which player, has made the most appearances in the UEFA Champions League round of 16? And your guess is as good as mine. Cristiano Ronaldo. Cristiano Ronaldo has made 36 appearances, as well as Lionel Messi. They've both made 36 appearances in the round of 16 of the UEFA Champions League. Remember, Cristiano Ronaldo was on the books of Manchester United, Real Madrid, as well as Juventus, and Lionel Messi being on the books of FC Barcelona, and recently before departing to the MLS club Inter Miami, he was on the books of French champions Paris Saint-Germain, followed by obviously in third Karim Benzema, with making 28 appearances in the round of 16 of the UEFA Champions League, who featured on the books of Lyon as well as Real Madrid, followed by Iker Casillas with 27, who obviously represented Real Madrid as well as FC Porto, and Iker Casillas, as well as his compatriot Sergio Ramos, are tied on 27 appearances for Real Madrid as well as Sevilla, right? Another followed by his fellow compatriot Andres Iniesta, who's also tied with the German sensation Thomas Müller, German legend Thomas Müller, right? They featured for Barcelona and Bayern Munich respectively, followed by David Alaba, Toni Kroos, as well as Pepe, who are also tied on 24 appearances in the round of 16th of the UEFA Champions League. David Alaba featured for Bayern Munich and Real Madrid, Toni Kroos likewise, as well as Pepe featured on the books of FC Porto, Real Madrid, as well as Besiktas. And followed by, obviously it's tied, 4 players are tied on 23 appearances in the round of 16 of the UEFA Champions League, which is Brazilian right back Dani Alves, Spanish CDM, Sergio Busquets, Zlatan Ibrahimovic, as well as Dutch legend Arjen Robben, right? So Arjen Robben featured for Chelsea, Real Madrid, as well as Bayern Munich. Zlatan Ibrahimovic featured for Ajax Amsterdam, Juventus, Inter Milan, Barcelona, AC Milan, as well as Paris Saint-Germain. Sergio Busquets obviously featured for FC Barcelona before departing, before his contract expired, last year, late June, and then he was scheduled to go to Inter Miami to join his former Barcelona teammates, Lionel Messi and Jordi Alba. And we also saw another addition of Luis Suarez actually joining them. And then obviously Dani Alves represented Sevilla, Barcelona, Juventus, as well as Paris Saint-Germain. So those are the players that have got the most appearances in the round of 16 of the UEFA Champions League. So then the next question comes to bear, right? Which player has scored the most goals in the Champions League round of 16? Your guess is as good as mine. Obviously the GOAT, Lionel Messi. Lionel Messi has scored 29 times in the round of 16 of the Champions League, and he has set the record. He has netted 29 times, obviously for FC Barcelona, followed by Cristiano Ronaldo with 25 strikes, right, at this stage of the competition in the UEFA Champions League, followed by Karim Benzema with 17, Robert Lewandowski also with 17, as well as Thomas Muller with 14. So those are the players that have scored the most goals in this stage of the competition in the history, right? And another question comes to beg: which player has scored the most goals in a Champions League round of 16 game? Right, it's a tie. It's Lionel Messi as well as Erling Haaland. Remember, Lionel Messi had this record for the longest of time. Remember, he netted 5 goals against Bayer Leverkusen, right, in March 2012. And then Erling Haaland did the same thing against Leipzig, Real Madrid's opponents in the round of 16 this year. He netted 5 times. Last year around this time, on the 14th of March 2023, followed by Mario Gomez, who netted 4 times against FC Basel for Bayern Munich, followed by Josep Ilicic, who netted 4 times against Valencia for Atalanta, followed by Sylvian Wiltord, who netted 4 times, who netted a hat-trick, right, against Bremen for Lyon. So there's a number of players who have scored a hat-trick at this stage of the competition, right, which includes Karim Benzema against Paris Saint-Germain, Robert Lewandowski against FC Salzburg during his time at Bayern Munich. Kylian Mbappe did the same against FC Barcelona at the Camp Nou. Cristiano Ronaldo did the same for Juventus in a dramatic comeback against Atletico Madrid. Sadio Mane did the same for Liverpool against FC Porto. Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang did the same for Borussia Dortmund against Benfica. Robin van Persie did the same for Manchester United against Olympiacos, as well as Danish legend and striker Nicolas Bentner did the same for Arsenal against Porto, just over a decade ago. So those are the records that have been set of players that have managed to score a lot of goals in one game, the most goals in one game. And obviously Lionel Messi and Erling Haaland are top of that list. Players who have managed to score 5 times in one game, right, in this stage of the competition, which came against Bayer Leverkusen and Leipzig. So clearly Erling Haaland as well as Lionel Messi enjoy scoring against German opposition, right? They really do enjoy scoring against German opposition, to say the least. Not to even say the fact that Erling Haaland, has actually played in Germany for that fact, but even now, currently in UEFA competition, playing on the books of Manchester City, he seems to keep that scoring touch against German opposition. So another question that comes to beg: which player has scored the most goals in a Champions League round of 16 tie? My guess is as good as yours. Lionel Messi. Lionel Messi has scored 6 times against Bayer Leverkusen. Josep Ilicic has scored 5 times against Valencia for Atalanta. Erling Haaland has scored 5 times against Leipzig. Erling Haaland has scored 4 times against Sevilla, right, during his time at Borussia Dortmund. Mario Gomez netted 4 times against FC Basel. Kylian Mbappe netted 4 times against FC Barcelona. Cristiano Ronaldo netted 4 times for Real Madrid against Schalke. Wayne Rooney netted 4 times against AC Milan for Manchester United. And Sylvian Wiltord, netted 4 times against Werder Bremen for Olympique Lyon. Right. So the clubs that have reached the Champions League round of 16 the most times. So ask yourself a question: which club has reached the Champions League round of 16 the most times? Which club? Obviously, we know the record holders, Real Madrid. Real Madrid have reached the stage of the competition 21 times, including this season, followed by Bayern Munich 20, followed by FC Barcelona 18, followed by Chelsea 17 times, followed by Arsenal 15 times, followed by FC Porto 14 times, followed by Juventus 13 times, followed by Manchester United 12 times, Paris Saint-Germain 12 times, and then all the rest of the 5 teams that I'm going to mention are all tied. AC Milan, Inter Milan, Liverpool, Lyon, as well as Manchester City have all reached the stage of the competition 11 times. So it's basically a tie between those 5 clubs, right? And another thing to say, another question comes to begging. So again, furthermore, which country has had the most teams that have featured in the Champions League round of 16? Surprisingly, England, right? So England opposition have had 72. England teams have featured 72 times in this stage of the competition, followed by Spain. Spanish teams have featured 66 times, Italian clubs have featured 52 times. German clubs have featured 51 times, as well as France clubs have featured 32 times at this stage of the competition. Another question: which country has had the most different teams in the Champions League round of 16? Including this season. Obviously, Spain with 10, Germany with 10, Italy with 8, England with 7, France with 6. So which club has won the most Champions League round of 16 ties? Obviously, the Bavarians, Bayern Munich. Bayern Munich have won 15 times during this stage of the competition, followed by FC Barcelona, who have won 14 times. Real Madrid have won 12 times. Chelsea have won 11 times. Liverpool have won 8 times. Juventus, Manchester City, and Manchester United have won 7 times. Atletico Madrid, AC Milan, and well as Paris Saint-Germain have won 6 times. Arsenal, Inter Milan, Lyon, as well as FC Porto have won 5 times during this stage of the competition. So those are the teams that have got the most wins during this stage of the competition. And another question comes to bear. This is an unwanted record, right? But yeah, those records still do stand. Which club has lost the most Champions League round of 16 ties? Guess what? Arsenal. Arsenal have lost 9 times in the round of 16 of the UEFA Champions League, followed by FC Porto, Real Madrid, who have lost 8 times. Chelsea, Lyon, Juventus have lost 6 times. AC Milan, Inter Milan, Leverkusen, Bayer Leverkusen, Manchester United, as well as Paris Saint-Germain have lost 5 times. Bayern Munich, Borussia Dortmund, AS Roma, Schalke, as well as Sevilla have lost 4 times during this stage of the competition. Okay, which club has won the most Champions League round of 16 matches? Bayern Munich. Again, Bayern Munich have won 22 times. FC Barcelona as well as Real Madrid have won 21 times, right? Chelsea have won 13 times. Juventus and Liverpool have won 12 times. Arsenal and Manchester City have won 11 times. Benfica as well as Paris Saint-Germain have won 10 times. Lyon as well as Manchester United have won 9 times. Which club has lost the most Champions League round of 16 matches? Arsenal and Real Madrid have lost 13 matches. Chelsea have lost 11 matches. Juventus as well as FC Porto have lost 10 matches. Bayern Munich has lost 9 matches. AC Milan, Borussia Dortmund, Leverkusen, Liverpool, Manchester United as well as Paris Saint-Germain have all lost 8 matches. Olympique Lyonnais, AS Roma as well as Schalke have lost 7 times. Okay, straight up. And which club has scored the most Champions League round of 16 goals? Bayern Munich has scored 98 goals in the round of 16. Barcelona has scored 75 goals. Real Madrid has scored 69 goals. Manchester City has scored 46 goals. Chelsea has scored 44 goals. Juventus has scored 39 goals. Paris Saint-Germain has scored 36 goals. Liverpool has scored 34 goals. Olympique Lyonnais has scored 28 goals. Manchester United has scored 27 goals, as well as FC Porto has scored 26 goals. Those are just staggering numbers, if you ask me. Those are staggering numbers. And fact of the matter, some of these clubs that I keep mentioning, that keep popping up on these lists, haven't even made it to the Champions League knockout stages in many years. And remember, Olympique Lyonnais are even struggling currently in the league out because they're still fighting for relegation. So, after a woeful start to the season, and Manchester United still, I don't see them playing in the Champions League next season. So, it's just staggering numbers. And for the fact that these clubs keep on popping up, says a lot. But I doubt that they will even feature, because these records will be broken soon by other clubs such as Manchester City, because who keep on making a statement. Chelsea perhaps might not qualify for the UEFA Champions League next season because they just far off the pace. Their league form hasn't been good. But perhaps we will see them in the Europa League next season. So another question that comes to bear: which club has conceded the most Champions League round of 16 goals? Real Madrid has conceded 48 goals. Arsenal has conceded 42 goals. Bayern Munich has conceded 41 goals. FC Barcelona has conceded 39 goals. Chelsea has conceded 38 goals. FC Porto has conceded 36. Juventus has conceded 32. And Schalke has also conceded 31. Okay, another one. What is the biggest win in a Champions League round of 16 match? 7-0, of course. Bayern defeated FC Basel 7-0 in the return fixture, right? Bayern Munich also defeated Shakhtar Donetsk 7-0 again. Manchester City defeated Schalke 7-0. Manchester City defeated Leipzig 7-0. Bayern Munich defeated Sporting Lisbon 7-1. Barcelona defeated Bayer Leverkusen 7-1. Bayern Munich defeated Salzburg 7-1. Basically, those are, you know what's even ironic with what I just said? All those clubs that I've mentioned who have created these staggering records are teams that have been managed by Pep Guardiola. Pep Guardiola is managed by Munich, Manchester City, as well as Barcelona. And these are the clubs that have got the biggest wins in Champions League round of 16 history, especially in a Champions League round of 16 game. These are the clubs that have got the most wins. And all these clubs have been managed by, Pep Guardiola, ironically. So, yeah, it's just ironic to say the least, And again, what is the biggest aggregate win in a Champions League round of 16 time? Okay, it's crazy. Bayern Munich, again, setting records and setting records and setting records. Remember, what's funny is that Bayern Munich have set a record of never losing a group stage game in the Champions League in many years. So this record that they have set, this aggregate score that they have set was 12-1 against Sporting Lisbon. 12-1 against Sporting Lisbon in the 2008-2009 season. Olympic Lyon did the same, 10-2. Staggering aggregate, 10 goals to 2. You understand? Against Werder Bremen in the 2004-2005 season. And then FC Barcelona did the same with Bayer Leverkusen, 10-2, right? In the 2011-2012 season. Bayern Munich did the same against Arsenal. Oh, Arsenal. Poor Arsenal. To them, Bayern Munich has always been a nightmare for many years. 10-2 in the 2016-2017 season. And then Manchester City against Schalke, right? 10-2 in the 2018-2019 season. So, records and records and records and records. And last but not least, which Champions League round of 16 tie produced the most goals? Again, your guess is as good as mine. Bayern Munich versus Sporting Lisbon, 12-1. 13 goals were produced. Lyon versus Bremen, 12 goals were produced. Barcelona versus Bayer Leverkusen, 12 goals. Bayern Munich versus Arsenal, 12 goals. Monaco versus Manchester City, 12 goals. Manchester City versus Schalke, 12 goals. Atalanta versus Valencia, 12 goals. So, yeah, that is how it is, man. And again, let's look at this one. What is the biggest first leg deficit overturned in the Champions League round of 16? PSG versus Barcelona. So, PSG led by 4 goals to 0. When Angel Di Maria scored a brace in that particular encounter in the 2016-2017 season, right? They led by 4 goals to 0 from the Parc des Princes, taking that lead back to the Camp Nou. And guess what? Barcelona came back in emphatic fashion. That was the greatest comeback in Champions League history, right? To secure a 6-1 victory on the night and secure 6-5 victory on aggregate. And another question comes to begging. Who got the fastest red card in the Champions League round of 16? Guess who? The Ukrainian, Alexander Kucher. He got a red card in the first 4 minutes of a particular game. First 4 minutes, which came against Bayern Munich on the 11th of March 2015. And which Champions League round of 16 ties have all gone to extra time? Okay. Juventus against Real Madrid in the 2004-2005 season. AC Milan against Celtic in the 2006-2007 season. Chelsea against Napoli, 2011-2012 season. Paris Saint-Germain against Chelsea, 2014-2015 season. Bayern Munich against Juventus, 2015-2016 season. Porto against AS Roma, 2018-2019 season. Atletico Madrid against Liverpool, 2019-2020 season. Juventus against FC Porto, 2020-21 season. Which Champions League round of 16 ties were decided by a penalty shootout? Fenerbahce vs Sevilla in the 2007-2008 season, right? Schalke against FC Porto, 2007-2008 season. Atletico Madrid against PSV Eindhoven in the 2015-2016 season. Atletico Madrid against Bayer Leverkusen, 2014-2015 season. Apoel against Olympic Lyonnais, 2011-2012 season, Arsenal against Roma. 2008-2009 season, Schalke vs Porto. 2007-2008 season. So basically, those are all the records that have been set, in the history of the Champions League round of 16. So ahead of the round of 16, we had to discuss. This was a major talking point, right? So we'll be in touch pretty soon with regards to the Champions League fixtures, round of 16 fixtures that are going to be taking place tonight as well as on Wednesday evening. So we'll be in touch for that, and stay tuned for more. Cheers, man. All right, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, urgent announcement. So there's going to be a new format, right, for the UEFA Champions League post-2024. So here's everything that you actually need to know about this new development, right? So the 2024-2025 edition of the UEFA Champions League will now follow a new format, right? So let us explain what will change, what will actually remain the same, and what it actually entails for the supporters and how it impacts UEFA's other club competitions, right? So, there is a fundamental reason that European football is one of the world's most successful and popular sports, right, on the planet. It's the beautiful game. Football is the beautiful game. Football is a religion, okay? Because it never stands still, right? Because remember, since the inaugural competition known as the European Champions Clubs Cup, which kicked off in the year 1955, UEFA has continuously evolved, right? And adapted, the UEFA Champions League to keep, pace with wider changes in the game. And to actually ensure that the new 2024-2025 format will deliver the best for the clubs, players, as well as fans, UEFA based, its design on extensive, consultations with key, stakeholders in the European football community, right? And the final format, access list calendar for the European club competitions was approved on the 10th of May 2022. So that was basically now over 2 years ago, just under 2 years ago, right? And, further to UEFA's decision of, 19 April 2021 to introduce a new competition system, right? So what we have actually noticed is the fact that UEFA has clearly shown that, there's a full commitment, to respecting the fundamental values of the sport and defending the key principle, to open all other competitions, right? And with qualification based on, sporting merit, fully in line with the values and solidarity-based European sports model. The UEFA president, Alexander Kaferin, he did really say that, he is pleased with the unanimous decision of the UEFA Executive Committee with the European Club Association, European leagues, national associations, I mean to say, all coming to a full agreement with the proposal that was actually put to the table, right? So another proof that European football is actually more unified than ever is that, look, we gotta discuss furthermore on how, the UEFA Champions League format will actually change from 2024, from the 2024-2025 season going onwards, right? And right now, it's actually gonna be very interesting, to actually see how this will actually impact the game, impact the players, teams, you understand, and what reward will actually come for the clubs that will actually partake in this new competition, in this new format, and how it will actually be beneficial. We'll actually see that, right? So, look, here's how it will actually change, how the format will actually change, right? The pivotal change in the reforms, announced by the UEFA Executive Committee is the departure from the current format's group stage system, right? So the present Champions League group stage includes 32 participants divided into 8 groups of 4. So from the 2024-2025 season, 36 clubs will participate in the UEFA Champions League, phase, former group stage, giving 4 more sides the opportunity to compete against the best clubs in Europe, right? So those 36 clubs will participate in a single league competition in which all 36 clubs, will, be competing. It's going to be a situation where, all 36 competing clubs are ranked together, right? So under the new format, teams will play 8 matches in the new league phase, right? Which used to be like the formally the group stages. So they will no longer play three opponents twice, home and away, but will instead face fixtures against 8 different teams, playing half of those matches at home and half of them away. So to determine the 8 different opponents, the teams will initially, be ranked in 4 seeding pots. Each team will then be drawn to play 2 opponents from each of these pots, right? Playing 1 match against a team from each pot at home and 1 away. So this therefore gives the opportunity for clubs to test themselves against a wider range of opponents and raises the prospect of fans, of seeing the top teams go head to head more often and earlier in the competition. And it will also result in more competitive matches for every club across the board, right? So another thing, how will, the 4 extra Champions League group stage spots be allocated? So, number 1, qualification for the UEFA Champions League will continue to be open and depend on a club's final position in the previous season's domestic league competition, combined with each association's position in the association, right? And in the association club coefficient ranking. So the basis of the access list will remain the same as for the current season, and the additional 4 slots available in the 2024-2025 season will be allocated as follows, right? So number 1, look, there's 4 slots that I'm going to mention to you guys, right? So the first slot is that that particular place will go to the club ranked 3rd in the championship of the association in 5th position in the access list, which is determined by the UEFA Association Club Coefficient Ranking. And then slot 2, this place will be awarded to the domestic champion by extending from 4 to 5 the number of clubs qualifying via the champions path of the competition's qualifying process, which will consist of 4 qualifying rounds. And then slot 3, the final slots, which is 3 and 4, those places will actually go to the associations with the best collective performance by their clubs in the previous season. So basically, example, let me give you a particular example or a scenario, right? So the association club coefficient of the previous season, which is based on the total number of club coefficient points obtained by each club from an association, right, divided by the number of participating clubs from that association. So those 2 associations will earn 1 automatic place in the league phase, right? So which is basically the European performance spot, to say the least. And for the club ranked next, best in their domestic league, behind those clubs that have already qualified directly for the league phase. Okay, I'm not sure if I make sense, but I hope I do, right? I will actually explain to you further if you guys have got questions and if there's something that you might not understand, right? So another thing, how will the teams reach the Champions League, knockout phase? And will the format, for the knockout phase change? Perhaps yes, but look, let me explain it to you in this particular scenario, right? So the results for each match will decide the overall ranking in the new league, with 3 points for win and 1 for draw still applying, obviously, right? So the top 8 sides in the league will qualify automatically for the round of 16, while the teams finishing in 9th to 24th place will compete in a 2-legged knockout phase playoff to secure their path to the round of 16 of the competition. So the teams that finish 25th or lower will be eliminated with no access to the UEFA Europa League. You understand? So, like I said, the teams that finish 25th or lower will be eliminated and will play no further part, in the UEFA competitions, meaning that they won't even have any access to playing in the UEFA Europa League. So the new format with all teams ranked together in a single league will mean that there is more to play for all, the way through to the final night of the league phase. So in the knockout phase, the teams which finish between 9th and 16th will be seeded in the knockout phase playoff, right? So meaning they'll face a team placed 17th to 24th with, in principle, the return leg will be at home. And the 8 teams which prevail in the knockout phase playoffs will then progress to the round of 16, which, they will face off, one of the top 8 finishers, right, who will be seeded in the round of 16. So again, another thing is if you are to strengthen the synergy between the league and the knockout phases, right, and actually provide a more sporting, incentive, during the league phase, the pairings of the knockout phase will be partly determined by the league phase rankings, with the draw, which likewise determines and lays out the route, for teams, to actually reach the final of this particular, newly formatted competition. So basically, like from the round of 16 onwards, right, the competition will continue to follow its existing format of knockout rounds, leading to the final stage at a neutral venue selected by, UEFA, right? And all games, that will be taking place before the final will continue to be played in midweek. So recognizing the importance of domestic calendar of games across Europe, while the final will continue to be played on a Saturday, as always, right? Remember, this year's Champions League will be hosted by Wembley Stadium. The Champions League final will be hosted by Wembley Stadium in London, right? The capital of England. So remember, the last time Wembley Stadium did host the Champions League final was I'm assuming it was in 2011. Yeah, 2011 was the last time we saw a UEFA Champions League final at the Wembley Stadium, at the iconic Wembley Stadium, where Barcelona emerged victorious with a 3-1 victory over Manchester United, right? So, look, another thing that we also asked questions that was a question, and which was obviously answered, was the fact that will the Europa League and the Europa Conference League formats change, from the 2024-2025 season as well, just like the UEFA Champions League, right? Yes, indeed, both of those competitions will also see a change in format, because similar format changes will also be applied to the UEFA Europa League, right? So 8 matches and therefore 8 different opponents in the league phase, right? And the UEFA Europa Conference League, which will be called the UEFA Conference League as of 2024-2025, right? 6 matches and therefore 6 different opponents in the league phase, with both competitions also featuring like 36 teams in the league phase, right? So yeah, it's pretty much interesting, to say the least, and I'm actually looking forward to this one. I want to see how will this actually work out, right? And look, how will the calendar actually look for the new format of the 3 competitions, right? So firstly, the Champions League as well as the Europa League matches will be played between September and January, right? So while the Europa Conference League matches will be played between September and December, so each of the 3 UEFA club competitions will have one exclusive match week, right? With the other 2 competitions not being scheduled in this week. In standard weeks, the Champions League matches will be played on Tuesdays and Wednesdays as always, and obviously the Europa League as well as Europa Conference League matches will be contested on Thursdays. So in the UEFA Champions League exclusive week, Champions League matches will be played on Tuesday, Wednesday, as well as Thursday, right? And the Europa League exclusive 1 week, right? Europa League matches will be held on Wednesday and Thursday, and in the Europa Conference League exclusive week, Europa Conference League matches will take place on Thursday. So for the last match day of each of the competition's league phases, all games will be played simultaneously. So yeah, you can see that, okay, there's a new change, right? There's something that has been added, because remember, ordinarily you're not normally used to seeing Champions League games being played on a Thursday. So but with what has actually been announced by UEFA is that we will actually see that actually happening for the first time, due to the fact that it also has to accommodate other UEFA competitions, and due to the fact that it will actually be extended, so some of the games will also have to be taking place on that particular day of the week. So you look at the way how this new Champions League format will actually benefit the fans, right? So the new Champions League format, right, will actually involve more European teams in each competition, right? And which also provides room for the fans not only to see more top European matches, but also to see those matches take place earlier in the competition, right? And the new format, will introduce a better competitive balance, between all the teams, with the possibility for each team to play opponents of a similar competitive level throughout the league phase, okay? And another thing is that, every game counts, right? Because the new league format will actually ensure that any result has the potential to dramatically change a team's position, right up to and including the very last match day, Winning or losing the last game of the league phase, could make the difference between a side qualifying automatically for the last 16, entering the playoffs, or being eliminated from the competition altogether. So you look at it again, how will the new Champions League format actually benefit the European game? So the changes, made are designed to secure the positive future of European football and every level, and to actually meet the evolving needs of all its stakeholders. So unequivocally, confirming joint commitment to the principle of open competition, and like sporting merit across the continent, the common purpose, will also be there to actually ensure that, they sustain the domestic leagues, and as well as, the new landscape of the UEFA club competitions will actually allow more teams and therefore more coaches and players, to compete in more competitive games on the European stage. So yeah, perhaps it will work to an extent. Yes, for the fact that what's actually more exciting is the fact that there are more teams that are being added to it. So which does give some teams an opportunity to actually qualify, for the Champions League. Some teams that have never played at the Champions League, but you can see some teams are showing so much promise in their domestic leagues. Because remember, there are certain teams that, they always come close by inches, but they always miss out, by just like, slightly. Maybe some of the teams that finish in a Champions League position have got a better head-to-head record, perhaps like maybe points difference, you understand? So yeah, it will give so many other clubs an opportunity to actually partake in, Europe's finest competition, right? And UEFA has also currently reaffirmed its strong financial commitment to the whole European football experience, and it will actually initiate, steps to ensure that solidarity is guaranteed, to the clubs which, do not participate in UEFA club competitions. So this will therefore reinforce the solid foundation on which, the game in Europe is actually built. And it's not the first time that we have seen a change in the format of the UEFA Champions League, because even over the years we've seen a lot of change, right? Because the Champions League and the Europa League timelines actually show, more detail on how each competition has evolved. You remember from the origins of the European Champion Clubs Cup, which kicked off in 1955, to the UEFA Cup, and then the UEFA Cup, Winners' Cup, and more recently the UEFA Men's Club competition formats, which currently exists today. So we've seen so many changes in this particular competition, and this current change, it's actually a way of showing how it has actually evolved, and actually, coming up with new innovative ideas to actually improve the standard of this competition, actually make it more competitive. So I'm actually looking forward to this, and I actually hope to see more, right? And how it will actually pan out, right? Because currently we're still going on, we still have fixtures that are going on, round of 16 fixtures that are still ongoing, right? Already 4 of them have been wrapped up. Leipzig losing at home to Real Madrid 1-0, and Manchester City winning away. Defending champions Manchester City securing a 3-1 victory away from home, away to Copenhagen. PSG securing a comfortable 2-0 victory over Real Sociedad at home, and then Lazio shocking, Bayern Munich by a 1-0 at the Stadio Olimpico. So those are the games that have been wrapped up currently, first leg games of the round of 16. We're still gonna see more clashes in the following week. So yeah, man. This is exciting news, to say the least. Very exciting. Yeah, it's very exciting. All right. And then, look, we're going to be diving into the fact that, look, the 16 teams that are still in the round of 16, that will be competing in the round of 16 of this year's UEFA Champions League, right? I want us to actually take a quick look at the form of these teams, which players have actually been on form, which players have actually shined for their respective clubs in this year's competition, records that have actually been broken, etc., etc. So, look, the 16 teams that are still involved, right, in the 2023-2024 UEFA Champions League, are actually battling it out, for the ultimate prize in European club football, right? So, we're just going to keep track, because, football is a religion, ladies and gentlemen. Football is indeed a religion. So, the first club that I want us to actually look at is Premier League outfit Arsenal, right? Arsenal, their form has actually been quite decent, right? Because remember, Arsenal, they didn't start the year very well, right? And their form has actually been decent because they've actually won their last 4 games coming into the game against FC Porto in the Champions League, right? So remember, they just like secured an emphatic away victory, to the North London outfit West Ham United at the London Stadium by 6-0. So remember, now you look at it now, what's next for actually Arsenal? They will be taking on FC Porto, right, in Portugal on the 21st of February, right? So you look at Arsenal's form. Bukayo Saka is actually one player to actually look out for, because remember, Bukayo Saka, he scored his 50th as well as his 51st, goals for Arsenal as like the North London, outfit actually downed West Ham 6-0, to actually record their biggest league victory since, February 2012, right? And we go onwards to like the 2014 finalists, 2014 and 2016 finalists, Atletico Madrid. So Atletico Madrid haven't been on the best of forms because they are winless in their last 3 games, right? Losing 2 consecutive games, right? And remember, their most recent one, they just come on the brink of a defeat to Sevilla at the Ramon Sanchez Pizjuan. So now they face off against 2010 winners, right? 2010 champions Inter Milan, and as well as last season's runners-up, right? And following a run of 5 consecutive wins, right, we've now seen that Diego Simeone's side have now gone 3 games without a victory, like I said. So they've actually drawn once, lost twice, and including their Spanish Cup semi-final first leg loss to Athletic Bilbao. So there's actually a lot to actually play for Atletico Madrid in order for them to actually secure their credentials of being, a team that is actually competitive, that can actually compete for, prizes, that can compete for the Champions League this season. But I find it very unlikely against an informed Inter Milan squad, because this Inter Milan team has shown us that, they are a team that is worthy of contention of actually winning, this year's Champions League after an impressive, showing in last season's competition. And then we go to their fellow Spanish rivals, right? We look at FC Barcelona. FC Barcelona will be also traveling to Napoli, right, on the 21st of February, right? And Barcelona have registered at least once in each of their 19 games, but they've only kept 3 clean sheets at that time. So it shows you that there's a lot of defensive frailties from the side of FC Barcelona. We look at the fact that they haven't had the best of seasons. It has been one of those inconsistent seasons for Blaugrana. But we hope that, look, with time, as time goes by, for the fact that it's actually Xavi's last season, maybe they will actually display an impressive showing in this year's Champions League. Perhaps maybe cause a fairy tale upset, in terms of maybe winning it, because at this particular moment in time, nobody actually fancies Blaugrana to actually clinch this year's, ultimate prize of the Champions League, right? And then for them to actually make it far to the quarterfinals would actually be a massive achievement, because you're talking about a side that hasn't made it to the UEFA Champions League knockout stages for the past 2 seasons, right? As they finished 3rd in their groups, relegating them to the UEFA Europa League, and they haven't really done well even in the Europa League. So remember, they were knocked out by Eintracht Frankfurt, right, in the semi-finals during the 2021-2022 season, as well as they were knocked out by Manchester United in the round of 16 last season. So yeah, Blaugrana literally have a lot of work to do if they are to prove that they are worthy of competing for the ultimate prize. Then we look at the Bavarians, Bayern Munich. So their loss to Lazio, was just like their second, in their last, 18 UEFA Champions League matches. So remember, Bayern Munich, pretty boast an impressive record in the UEFA Champions League. Remember, like I said, I did mention the fact that Bayern Munich, have never lost the UEFA Champions League group stage game in over like a decade or so. So they possess an incredible record in the Champions League, and for the fact that this is only just their second loss in 18 games says a lot that they are a team that is worthy of contention. Like I said, it's just the first leg. They still have to take it back to the Allianz Arena. Yes, they're trailing by a one goal deficit, but it's not the end of the world. We know Bayern Munich, what they are capable of. We've seen them overturn many deficits before. So if I'm a Lazio supporter in Italy at Rome, I wouldn't be excited as yet. I would still, say, you know what, guys, let us wait for the second leg we still have plenty of more work to do, because a slender 1 goal advantage is not going to make us, go through to the next round, because we're going to be playing at the Allianz Arena, and we know how deadly Bayern Munich is at home, especially in the Champions League. So we go to the Danish, the Danish Superliga champions, FC Copenhagen. So with them, They just lost their previous game, right, to Manchester City, which is basically the first leg. And what can we say? Yeah, Magnus Madsen's equalizer against City, was actually the first goal scored by a Danish side in the knockout stages of this particular tournament. So there's no Danish side that has actually scored in the UEFA Champions League knockout stages. So this is actually the first time in history that a Danish side has actually been able to find the back of the net in the knockout stages of the UEFA Champions League. So that was actually a historic moment for FC Copenhagen and for Magnus Madsen, because his name will always go down in the history books for that particular historic moment. And if we go to 1996 finalists as well as to 2013 finalists Borussia Dortmund, who have actually been on sublime form, right? They've actually been on sublime form in the Bundesliga, right? They've actually won 4 of their last 7. They've actually won 4 of their last 6 games. So this is actually a team that is on the lookout, right? And remember, right now, you look at Daniel Malen. He struck twice, as well as Nicholas. Füllkrug grabbed his 5th goal in 4 matches as Dortmund made it 8 games unbeaten. By downing Freiburg on Friday evening. And with that being said, Dortmund have always shown that they are a side that you can never underestimate. Remember, they were just unlucky to be dumped out by Chelsea last season, in the last 16. So it tells you one thing, that this is a team that can actually compete, right? At the highest level. They've done it many times, and they actually topped the group of death, which contained PSG, Newcastle United, as well as AC Milan. And for the fact that they were able to actually top that particular group says that, this is a team that you can never underestimate. You can never, take your eyes off them, because they do play scintillating football, right? And we go to the finalists, the runners-up from last season, Inter Milan, right? Inter Milan... They've been on sublime form, man, because they come into this game having won their 8 previous games. I mean, that's incredible, right? Because look at Inter Milan, right? Inter Milan have just won 24 out of their 32 games in the 2023-2024 season, and they've just only lost twice, right? And Lautaro Martinez has actually rattled the back of the net 22, times this season. So it tells you how this is a side that, if everybody is going to ask those kind of questions and say, look, guys, who's going to win this year's UEFA Champions League, I would put Inter Milan's name up there. I wouldn't just say Real Madrid or Manchester City. I would actually include Inter Milan, as well as even Bayern Munich. Yes, Bayern Munich may have lost the first leg to Lazio away from home, but that does not mean that you should sideline them and kick them to the side, because this is Bayern Munich. This is a team that has shown so much character. Even Real Madrid, even though Real Madrid won away to Leipzig, Real Madrid were not so convincing at all. They were really not convincing in that 1-0, away victory to Leipzig, because Leipzig, if they are to lose that tie against Los Blancos, they have got themselves to blame, because they missed so many chances that they should have put away in the back of the net. And now we're going to go to their fellow Italian side, Inter Milan. We're going to go to Lazio. Lazio, they just claimed a famous victory over Bayern Munich. And what that means is the fact that Lazio have only just lost 1 of their last 13 UEFA club competition matches at home, meaning they've won 7 and they've only drawn 5, right? As for Leipzig, have just won, 1 of their last 7 games in all competitions, right? They've drawn twice, they've lost 4, and against Real Madrid, they've failed to score for the first time in their last 20, European home matches. So that's also another unwanted record. On the side of Manchester City, another side that's also in form, right? They've won, their last 7 games coming into this particular encounter against Copenhagen, the first leg. So City have actually won their last 11 games in all competition. Meanwhile, both Kevin De Bruyne as well as Bernardo Silva's last 10 Champions League goals have all come in the knockout rounds, right? And for Napoli, They've actually had an inconsistent season, but they will be buoyed by the return of Victor Osimhen, who was on international duty for the Super Eagles of Nigeria, who were defeated by the host Cote d'Ivoire in the African Cup of Nations final, right? So Napoli's reverse away to Napoli's reverse away loss to AC Milan means that they are now winless in their last 6 away matches in all competitions. So they've lost 5 of those contests, right? And now they will be facing a Barcelona team that is also eager to impress after, a pretty poor season for Blaugrana. So it's not actually going to be an easy clash for both sides. Then we go straight to Paris Saint-Germain. Paris Saint-Germain, right, they are now unbeaten in 17 games, winning 13, while Kylian Mbappe has scored 13 in his last 10 matches. Then we go straight to Portugal, FC Porto. FC Porto, as they go head-to-head against Arsenal, the Dragons' 8-match unbeaten run, right? It came to an abrupt end as they went down away to Aruco. Porto have just drawn 3 of their last 33 matches in this term, winning 22 and actually only losing 8, right? And we go straight to PSV, right? PSV Eindhoven, the Dutch Eredivisie champions. So Luke de Jong has actually scored 26 goals in 33 appearances in all competitions this season for PSV, who are yet to lose in 21 Dutch league outings in the 2023-2024 season, winning 19 and actually just drawing 2. And Real Madrid, the record holders of this competition, they've won this competition 14 times. They are the kings of Europe. They are the kings of Champions League. So Real Madrid have won 7 of their last 7. So they boast a 100% record in the Champions League this season, equaling their best start, to a European Cup competition, right? And for Real Sociedad, they haven't been on the best of forms because they just lost their previous 2 games and they are winless in 5 games. So right now, Real Sociedad have lost all 3 of their Champions League round of 16 games, having suffered a pair of 1-0 defeats against Lyon at the stage, of the competition in 2003, 2004, and now they just recently lost again at the Parc des Princes to PSG again. So, yeah, man, that's basically the form of the 16 teams that will be competing in this year's Champions League round of 16. Encounters this season. So, yeah, man. That's all to say. So just tell me, what do you guys think? Who do you think will actually be the Champions League winners, right? Who do you think will be facing off at Wembley Stadium? Just tell me. Who? Alright, the Champions League knockout stages, round of 16. So we finally there, right? So yeah, let's start with the first game of the round of 16. Right? Remember there were 2 games that played on Tuesday, right? Tuesday, the 13th of February. It was obviously the record 14-time champions Real Madrid. They traveled to Germany to take on RB Red Bull Leipzig, and we also saw defending champions travel to Denmark to take on FC Copenhagen. So again, Leipzig 0, Real Madrid 1. It was a pretty interesting game of football, and the score line does not actually reflect the game, the events that actually took place on the field of play. The scoreline is not necessarily a reflection of that, because Leipzig were by far the better side on the day, and unfortunately they were just not clinical. Unfortunately, they just did not capitalize on the chances that they created. So that's the reason why they were eventually punished, right? Because Real Madrid just needed that one chance and they took it. It was in the back of the net, and that's what secured them the victory. You understand? It gives them an advantage going into the game at the Bernabeu next month, right, in the second leg. And their talisman, Jude Bellingham, will be back in action, because it was said that he will only be out for 2 to 3 weeks. So he will be back for the second leg. So Brahim Diaz actually did very well, as he filled Jude Bellingham's boots, to actually earn, the 14-time Champions League winners, a crucial away victory at RB Leipzig, because, yeah, that was a very good goal from the former AC Milan midfielder, because he made a stunning solo run, and he found the back of the net. It was just like that, that killer instinct that he actually made, dribbling past a couple of players and just like curling the ball into the top corner to actually, score a wonderful goal in the early, stages of the second half, right? And he even copied the celebration of his teammate, Jude Bellingham, right? So from that particular moment in time, I'll just reflect to you the events of the game, right? That was actually a superb 48th minute solo effort, that actually secured Real Madrid, a last 16 win and put the Spanish side in the driving seat, ahead of the second leg game, at the Santiago Bernabeu. And the midfielder, like I said earlier on, he did pay tribute to his teammate, Jude Bellingham, by actually replicating his celebration, right? So, look, man, the England international, has actually done very well for Real Madrid. He has exceeded all expectations. Remember now, he has actually hit 20 goals and actually he has got 8 assists in 29 games this season. But, he's said to be sidelined for up to 3 weeks with a sprained ankle. And, Diaz limped off before the full-time whistle at the Red Bull Arena, and he's also another blow for Carlo Ancelotti's side. So we haven't actually received any news with regards to Brahim Diaz's injury, but we hope it's not serious, because he is an important asset to this Real Madrid side, because he's got 8 goal contributions so far this season. And the 14-time, Champions League winners, misfired for long periods in Bellingham's absence. And they only had, Leipzig striker Benjamin Sesko. He made the most of the chances which came his way. And also had the Madrid goalkeeper Andre Lunin, not being in inspired form. But the Spaniards, have had significantly more work to do, on their own pitch on the 6th of March. Sesko, remember, headed the ball into the net after, Xavier's Schlager, had helped the ball back into the box, from Lunin's punch. But, as he dealt with it, unfortunately, he was just in an offside position, right? So the goal was just disallowed against, Benjamin Henriks, right? So it speaks to the fact that, the home side made a brilliant start to the game, actually finding the back of the net in the early stages of the game, to actually send those early warning signs to Real Madrid that, you cannot underestimate any opponent that has actually made it this far of the competition. Because, once you make it to the knockout stages of a Champions League competition, just understand the fact that you are a competitor. You are a fierce competitor. It doesn't matter. Historically, you can't look too much on history, right? It's not about the history. It's about now performance on the field. And I sincerely think that, Leipzig were by far the better team on the day. They just did not capitalize on their chances, because look, Sesko, he might have had a hat-trick inside the opening 10 minutes, failing to make the most of Xavi Simons' fine pass, firing straight at Lunin. Although, Aurelien Tchouameni saw a 9th-minute header cleared off the line for Real Madrid, with goalkeeper Peter Kulaski, safely, claiming Camavinga's follow-up. And then Hendricks, then tested Lunin from a distance, while Toni Kroos kept, Kulaski, on his toes after Vinicius Jr. had made, his first real contribution down the left-hand side. So, from that particular moment in time, we also saw Camavinga. He produced a vital touch to actually deflect, Sesko's 20-minute attempt into the side netting. And Real Madrid continued to look, vulnerable at the back, with Tchouameni having to make a vital challenge, to deny Sesko before Vinicius Jr. actually stepped wide after exchanging passes with Brahim Diaz, in stoppage time of the first half. But I might say, in the first half, we could have seen a lot of goals being scored, perhaps. But on the side of Leipzig, I think they were just not clinical in front of goal. Leipzig were just not clinical. They wasted so many opportunities. And, when as we saw even in the second half, we saw Jude Bellingham's replacement, right? He broke the deadlock within 3 minutes of the restart. And he did so in spectacular fashion. He picked up the ball from wide on the right, and then Diaz, Ironically, he span away from Ruam, and he also cut inside Simmons as well as Schlager, before curling the left-footed shot across, Gulaxi, and inside the far post. And Leipzig would have almost been level immediately, had Lennon, not produced a double save, from Danny Olmo as well as Sesko. And the keeper had the race from his line to prevent Sesko from latching onto Olmo's excellent through ball as the Germans, fought for a way back into the game. And at the other end, we saw Schlager did just enough to actually put off Rodrigo as he ran onto a Vinicius, through pass. But, it was a matter of, we saw from that particular moment in time, Real Madrid had broken at pace, and the Brazilians saw a shot come back off the post after he and Diaz had repelled the home defense and to shreds in with 19 minutes actually remaining, and from that particular moment in time, we saw the goalkeeper of Real Madrid, the Ukrainian, was on sublime form. He produced a string of saves, to deny Simmons, Sesko, Amadou Haidara as Leipzig pushed for an equalizer, but the late assault actually proved to no avail. And look, let's look at what this result actually meant, because remember now, Real Madrid have got a massive history when it comes to this competition, because Real Madrid, have been the champions of Europe for 14 times, but they know from experience that Leipzig, is not an easy place to visit. And again, the performance on Tuesday actually demonstrated it, that Leipzig is not an easy place to visit, because remember, before this particular encounter, we saw the two sides, they were paired in the 2022-2023 group stages, and with Carlo Ancelotti's side winning by 2-0 at the Santiago Bernabeu in Spain, thanks to late goals from Marco Asensio as well as Federico Valverde. And however, we saw also Marco Ross, his team struck twice, from set pieces in the opening 20 minutes of the reverse fixture, and they actually went on to win that game by 3-2. So on the side of Real Madrid, Brahim Diaz, Jude Bellingham's replacement in this particular encounter, he now has got 8 goals in all competitions this season, and 2 of those goals came in the UCL, right? So he has scored like 2 goals in the UEFA Champions League so far this season out of 3 starts. And the Ukrainian goalkeeper, the replacement to Thibaut Courtois, Andriy Lunin, he actually made 9 saves in the game, making him only the second goalkeeper in the history of the Champions League to actually make more than 9 or more saves in the same game, since Thibaut Courtois did the same in the Champions League final against Liverpool in 2022. And Vinicius Jr. now also, he has also been in sublime form in the UEFA Champions League this season for Real Madrid, because he has actually made 13 goal contributions in 11 UCL games, right? Scoring 9 goals and actually, creating 4 assists. So, yeah, that's actually the result from the first game between Real Madrid as well as Leipzig. And congratulations once again to Los Blancos for establishing an early advantage going into the second leg encounter on the 6th of March, at the Santiago Bernabeu. Well, obviously, it's safe to say that Manchester City, obviously, they're well on their way to another Champions League quarterfinal. After they, won, 3-1, in their first leg, round of 16 encounter at Copenhagen last night. So with goals coming from Kevin De Bruyne, Bernardo Silva, as well as Phil Foden, and Magnus Madsen. He's the one who scored the goal for the Danish side, in the 34th minute, which was just an equalizer after Kevin De Bruyne put Manchester City ahead in the first half. So what I can say, it was actually a historic victory for Manchester City, because it was actually their first away win in the knockout stages, of the Champions League, in just like over 2 years, following 5 successive draws since February 2022. And it was like, remember, it was a victory that came at Sporting Lisbon. So basically, it was also Manchester City's 20th Champions League game, without defeat, and their 9th win in a row, extending their record, of an English side in the European Cup. So they actually become the first first English side to actually win 9 consecutive, matches in the UEFA Champions League. So basically, that's the largest streak by any English team in the history of the UEFA Champions League, right? And this victory actually did come at a cost for the citizens, right? Because Jack Grealish and Bernardo Silva were both forced off with injuries, and on top of issues for Mateo Kovacic's Josko Guardiola, which prevented their involvement from the start, right? So a big blow for Manchester City, man, going forward, but hopefully it's not going to affect them because they do have players that can get the job done, and they do have an impressive squad depth. And with a lead to take back to the Etihad for the next month's second leg encounter at the Etihad, Pep Guardiola will certainly be pleased with how his side actually controlled the game in the first knockout game as defending champions, right? Because Manchester City are way too good, ladies and gentlemen. Let us just admit it, right? They're just too good. The way they were able to control the game, the way they were able to dominate possession, even though the Copenhagen, the home side, right? They had a game plan, which was obviously to absorb as much pressure to defend and frustrate Manchester City, close down those gaps. But it didn't really work effectively because City always find a way. I guess that just goes to the tactical genius of Pep Guardiola. City always find a way. They always find a way, because you look at how Pep Guardiola, he built a throwaway comment about his players, body language against Everton, with some more eye-catching remarks about Erling Haaland's need to to prioritize relaxing, over scoring goals, right? And it wasn't quite as simple as that, because it was actually clear that Guardiola wants his striker to focus on becoming a team player as much as possible, and the goals will come for a player of his quality. Because remember, football is a team sport, not an individual one, and I couldn't agree more with Pep Guardiola on that one, ladies and gentlemen. I couldn't. He's actually right, because at halftime you could see Erling Haaland, could be seen giving some, intense instructions to his captain, Kyle Walker, just outside the dressing room. Usually players, last opportunity to exchange instructions, before the second half. And Walker made his own, view clear, right, in a tense-looking conversation, and that was the end of it. Perhaps Haaland wasn't taking Guardiola's advice literally, when it came to encouraging his teammates in order to get himself more involved in a game. And the goal didn't come, but there was no doubting that he had the desire to actually get a goal, right? And you look at the fact that Manchester City put out a strong starting 11, and unfortunately their starting 11, right, only lasted for 20 minutes, because we saw Pep Guardiola, he recalled Jack Grealish after 5 games on the bench, and actually brought back Bernardo Silva into his attack following the Portuguese drop from the starting 11 against Everton. And however, both players, had quieter seasons than last term, in part due to the likes that, Phil Foden as well as World Cup winner Julian Alvarez, have been playing so well. They've been on sublime form. And now Erling Haaland and Kevin De Bruyne are back. So the midfield as well as the attack looks so different and looks more stronger than ever, right? And another thing is that Foden, has actually been moved out wide, right? And Bernardo Silva has dropped back into the midfield. So this was actually a ruthless, starting 11 that actually saw the informed Julian Alvarez dropped in favor of a more controlled, side, more akin to the one that won the treble last season. Because Foden was the only player, starting in Copenhagen who did not start the Champions League final. As well as at the back, we saw Kyle Walker, come in for Manuel Akanji, was the only difference from the Istanbul team sheet, right? And the back line of Walker, John Stones, Ruben Diaz, as well as Nathan Ake, were to say the least, only starting for the second time this season. And the other time, was the club's World Cup final when De Bruyne and Haaland were out on injury, right? And making this arguably the strongest team selection of the season, at the 37th attempt for coach Pep Guardiola. But unfortunately, there was not to be fortune for the starting 11 due to the fact that, Jack Grealish was forced, to actually be replaced due to an injury that he sustained after 20 minutes, which meant that, Guardiola will have to see that side in full flow for the time being, because the dominance of City's play and the opening goal through Kevin De Bruyne suggests that this is their best starting lineup, and it actually is worth, keeping this kind of a lineup because it is the winning lineup, right? And another thing that we can actually look at, people never tend to give him some credit. And the player that I'm talking about is Phil Foden. Phil Foden is one of those players that people never want to give some credit because look at Phil Foden, his influence on the wing, right? Because after all, right, Phil Foden being in the best form of his career and being a genuine number 10 option, Kevin De Bruyne's 9 goals or assists in 7 games has meant that Foden, has quietly shifted back to the wing. And it was always a risk. And Julian Alvarez, dropped out of the team, altogether, right? And, in Denmark, we saw City also had a number of number 10 options. Now most of them are fit again. And Foden was, quite on the back on the wing against Everton, but regained his place for the Champions League. And he was on the right with Bernardo Silva in the center, and there was not much inverting as he did earlier in the campaign. But still, one thing you must also give Phil Foden the credit is that he's able to adapt in any position. Because if you look at with all the changes, right, he was still able to influence the game just as much as, as if he was playing in the center in the number 10 position, right? Because it was actually Foden who sent in a fine reverse pass into Kevin De Bruyne's path, to actually open the scoring. And he was the one who actually, he kept the tempo in the second half for Manchester City when they were managing the contest, to actually preserve their lead. And at one point, he told Ederson to slow things down after a rare spell of Copenhagen pressure, before capping a fine individual display, with a crucial third goal in injury time that could kill the tie. It literally killed the tie. And remember, one thing is for sure, that Phil Foden did make history, right? Because remember, Phil Foden is actually the youngest English player to actually play 50 UEFA Champions League games. Phil Foden. He's the youngest English player to ever, play 50 UEFA Champions League games. And Phil Foden, at times, he may not get the minutes he wants, in the center, now that Kevin De Bruyne is back. But he's clearly taken the lessons from playing centrally back to his old position on the wing. And he is actually continuing to actually dictate, the play in tight games, right? And another thing is we also have to look at Ederson, that howler that actually, I'm sure he must have learned a valuable lesson from that howler that he made. Because I remember during the week before this particular encounter, John Stones, defender John Stones, spoke about the need to actually keep more clean sheets to actually extend, Manchester City's 10-game winning run. And the logic was that games, will be easy to win for City's, plethora of forwards if they know that their defense is dependable behind them, because that helped the attack out of jail against Everton. And, the back five on paper against Copenhagen was City's strongest of the season, but that means little when individual mistakes, right, allow another goal against City to haul them back to square one in another crucial game, because that was an incredible mistake made by the Brazilian goalkeeper, shot stopper Ederson, because City were in control against Copenhagen and had actually silenced the crowd. Kevin De Bruyne stroked the ball into the far corner. Jeremy Doku had kept pressure on after Jack Grealish's injury, and they were doing what they needed to do in a difficult away game. That was until, Ederson passed the simple ball straight to a white shirt on the edge of the area, and watching the second shot fly past him into the far corner, that was a very, from the Brazilian shot stopper, to say the least, from Ederson, that was very completely unnecessary, and it was an avoidable equalizer. It could have been avoided, that particular equalizer. And another thing is that the nature of Ederson's footwork and passing means that he gets City out of far more trouble than he gets them into, because they also wouldn't be in the UEFA Champions League without his Istanbul heroics, right? They wouldn't have won that UEFA Champions League title if it wasn't for his heroics in Istanbul, right? And remember, like this one, it's when you look at this howler that he made, you need to also look at the balance of things, right? Because it isn't to say that they aren't usually irritating when they do come along, when he makes those mistakes, but to be pegged from a position of such control was a reminder that they must be far more clinical at both ends if they want to retain their Champions League title, and that even the most reliable can be guilty at the cost, can be guilty of making costly mistakes for Manchester City, right? And they actually don't need that because there are teams that will punish. And that's exactly what Copenhagen did, right? They did punish Manchester City for that mistake. And another thing, it's very unfortunate for Jack Grealish, right? His string of misfortune does continue because after 5 games on the bench, Pep Guardiola finally had to came into the defense of Jack Grealish, in his recent press conferences. He actually backed up, his support of the winger with the recall against Copenhagen. And it was a route back, into the starting 11 that saw Grealish, back into the starting 11 for the first time in many games. Remember, last time he did feature in the starting 11 was that FA Cup game against Huddersfield Town, right? And it was actually, he only lasted for 18 minutes, right? And it's actually now, this particular injury can do so much damage, perhaps to Jack Grealish, because just like he did last season, it seems like he's always losing Jack Grealish in big games going forward because, he looked so distraught when he left the pitch, only after a very bad challenge from the Copenhagen defender on 18 minutes and his heels were clipped. But Grealish normally gets the Grealish that we all know. He gets straight back up, and only with the game, this time he hopped away, used his groin, and eventually went down, on his own accord. Despite attempts to actually get back on, he was quickly replaced and went straight down the tunnel. So the only positive is that he was able to, walk unaided, right? So maybe the injury might not be too serious, right? But yeah, it looks like the guy was distraught so much because Grealish and City, will actually hope that, the substitution was precautionary. And there are big games coming up for Manchester City, particularly the game against Chelsea in the Premier League at home. And no midweek break, for the foreseeable future because much has been, out of the team. His experience, his incomparable ball retention ability will be vital for the final months of the season, especially against the likes of Liverpool, Arsenal, Manchester United, as well as the future Champions League ties, right? And it feels like his luck has actually run out, on and off the pitch, in 2024, and it did continue in the game against Copenhagen in Denmark. So hopefully we wish him a speedy recovery, and congratulations once again to Manchester City. Congratulations to Kevin De Bruyne for another spectacular man of the match performance. Oh, yeah, man. Yeah, man, it's been very exciting to actually watch the Champions League, the return of the Champions League, right? When with regards to the round of 16 games that we've watched, right? So the third game that took place, right, at Paris, capital of France, right, between Paris Saint-Germain as well as Real Sociedad, at the Parc des Princes, right? Obviously PSG winning this encounter by 2-0, and goals from Kylian Mbappe as well as Bradley, Bacola actually sealed the victory for the, French champions, right? So, even with speculation, that is surrounding the future of Kylian Mbappe, the Paris Saint-Germain forward actually showed no signs of distraction whatsoever as, he actually drove his side, to a 2-0 first leg victory over Real Sociedad, in the last 16 of the UEFA Champions League. And Mbappe struck, just before the hour, drilling home from close range. And before Bradley, Bacola scored a terrific solo effort, to double the lead of the hosts, and, actually secure a very convincing 2-0 victory for PSG as they return to San Sebastian for the second leg in about a few weeks' time, right? So Kylian Mbappe was the inevitable hero, to say the least, again, as Paris Saint-Germain beat Real Sociedad by 2-0 in the first leg of their UEFA Champions League last 16 encounter at the Parc des Princes, right? So the 25-year-old French international, who has been heavily tipped, to leave for Real Madrid in the summer, broke the deadlock with a poacher's goal just a shy of an hour. He will be leaving PSG, unfortunately, as a free agent, I meant to say. But we'll get to that. Let's focus on the game first. And Bradley Bacola's solo effort then sealed the victory for the Parisians 20 minutes from time as Luis Enrique's men produced a much improved second half showing, right? So Real Sociedad actually dominated the game, with a relentless aggressive high press, suffocating the hosts and actually leading, to disenchantment from the home crowd, right? And Andre Silva headed just wide. Mikel Merino, thumped the crossbar with a superb strike on the stroke of halftime, as well as Imanol, Al Guachi's men threatened an upset. And however, we did see Paris Saint-Germain, raise their level before the break, and the Basque side seemed to be, they seemed to wilt a bit, leading to Mbappe and Barcola helping the host claim a significant advantage to San Sebastian in Spain. And next up for Paris Saint-Germain is that they will be visiting Nantes in Ligue 1, on Saturday, while Real Sociedad travel to Mallorca in La Liga on Sunday. So the second leg of this particular Champions League tie, will take place on the 5th of March in San Sebastian, Spain, obviously. So with at least PSG in the ascendancy with the 2-0 lead. Basically that's a healthy 2-goal lead. But remember, in Champions League football, a 2-goal lead is never enough. So you must always, understand the fact that don't just be too excited. You need to still maintain your lead and actually, what can I say? You still really need to, ensure that, you get the job done in the second leg, because you will be playing in front of a harsh crowd at San Sebastian, and it's not going to be an easy clash for PSG, right? Because we do know PSG have struggled against Spanish opposition in the past, even though they did once thump Barcelona before, away at the Camp Nou when Kylian Mbappe did get the hat-trick. But still, you can never underestimate any opposition, right, in the Champions League, because this is Champions League, right? And again, you look at the fact that the French champions, have actually fallen at the last 16 hurdle in 5 of their last 7 seasons. And after the first half of this encounter, they look to be in serious danger of actually coming unstuck early in the knockout stages once again. But PSG's main man, actually was the one who took center stage. He gave them an incredible performance. So when he's actually needed, he does deliver, because indeed much has actually been made of it. Kylian Mbappe being his final season at Paris Saint-Germain, and it is actually his final season, because he has confirmed that he will be leaving Paris Saint-Germain, at the end of the season as a free agent. And perhaps it could be his last opportunity. Perhaps this is his last opportunity. Not perhaps, this is his last opportunity to actually lead, Paris Saint-Germain to a maiden Champions League title. And, it was a headliner's maker's dream that, the French striker, got all the important, opening goal after the interval, but there are evidently stronger sides in the competition. But with an ace in the pack like Mbappe, you can't completely rule PSG out. And although they will still need to navigate, a tricky second leg, encounter in San Sebastian, right, against Real Sociedad. So it's not going to be an easy one. They still have got more work to do, because the second leg will actually prove that, if PSG are still capable of actually, being, serious contenders to actually, clinch the UEFA Champions League, or even play in the final at Wembley Stadium in London. So basically from this particular encounter, between PSG as well as Real Sociedad, there are a lot of key stats that we also got to look at, because remember, this was actually the first ever competitive meeting between Paris Saint-Germain as well as Real Sociedad, right? Knowing for the fact that the French side, have been eliminated on 5 of their last 6 occasions when they've actually faced Spanish opposition, in the 10 UCL knockout rounds, as well as eliminating Barcelona in the other, right, which was in the 2020-2021 season round of 16. And remember, with Real Sociedad have actually lost, their last 3 of their 6 meetings with French opponents in all competitions. Remember, they have lost both such games in the UEFA Champions League, going down 1-0 in both legs of the last 16 tie against Lyon, right, in the 2003-2004 season. And remember, Real Sociedad remained unbeaten in their, UEFA Champions League group this season, winning 3, drawing 3, and the Spanish side have been able to keep more clean sheets, right? Which is 4. They've been able to keep 4 clean sheets, and they've conceded fewer goals and have faced fewer shots on target, which is only 12. So they've only conceded 2 goals. And basically those records that I've actually stated to y'all is that, no other side. They've been better than every other side in terms of that, right? And in this season's UEFA Champions League group stages. And Real Sociedad have actually made more high turnovers than any side in the UEFA Champions League this season, while only their opponents PSG have perhaps done so, right? And all 7 of Real Sociedad's goals in the UEFA Champions League this season have been scored by Spanish players. We talk about Bryce Mendes, who has scored 3 times. We're talking about Mikel Oyarzabal, who has actually netted twice. We talk about Mikel Merino, who has netted once. We talk about Ender Barrenechea, who has actually netted once. The last team that has actually, have more different Spanish scorers, excluding own goals in a single campaign in the competition, was in 2021-2022 season semi-finalist Villarreal, who had 7 different goal scorers that were Spanish, right? And another record breaker is Kylian Mbappe. Kylian Mbappe has now scored 44 goals, he has now scored 44 goals in 65 Champions League appearances. Basically, that's the second highest UEFA Champions League goal scorer under the age of 25, overtaking the legendary Raul, right? And he has also scored 8 goals in his last, 6 appearances against Spanish opposition. So no player has actually created more chances than from open play than no player has created more chances from open play in the UEFA Champions League this season, other than the Paris Saint-Germain right back Achraf Hakimi. So yeah. Okay, again. So Lazio won Stadio. Let's go straight to the Stadio Olimpico, right? Located in the capital city of Italy, Rome, right? So we head straight to the Stadio Olimpico, where Lazio took on Bayern Munich in the first leg of the last 16 encounter, right? So Bayern Munich lose once again to Lazio, right? Remember why I say once again? Because they were walloped by Bayer Leverkusen in the Bundesliga over the weekend. So again, they lost 2 consecutive games. Bayern Munich away from home, right? So Bayern Munich lose to Lazio in the Champions League last 16 first leg. Bayern Munich were beaten by a Ciro Immobile penalty after Dayot. Upamecano was sent off in the UEFA Champions League last 16 first leg encounter with Lazio. And guess what? Now it actually came from the fact that Upamecano did receive an early shower, deservedly so. So remember, Bayern Munich were actually beaten 3-0 by Bundesliga leaders Bayer Leverkusen at the weekend. So now Bayern Munich actually had intentions to actually make amends in Rome. As we saw with Joshua Kimmich, flashed an early effort wide. Harry Kane could do no better after meeting a great Thomas Muller cross. Lazio actually began to threaten at the other end afterwards. We saw Alessio Romagnoli, headed straight at Manuel Neuer. While we saw also their talisman, the key player in that Lazio side, Luis Alberto, fizzed a long-range effort narrowly wide, right? We also saw Leroy Sané at the thick of things, as he himself, as well as, Gustav Isaksen, exchanged shots from outside the area that failed to actually find the target, as the first half ended all square, right? And second half, it was clearly no different, right? Bayern were more the dominant side, right? But they did not make their dominance, their dominance actually counted for nothing, right? Because we saw Neuer made a crucial block, to actually thwart, Isaksen soon after the restart. And we saw Jamal Musiala, then directed a close range strike from, Nosir Mazraoui's testing cross wide. Kane powered a header over as Bayern Munich tried to steal a first leg advantage, but they were left with it all to do when Upamecano was sent off for a 66-minute, lunge on Isaksen. Deservedly so. A denial of a goal-scoring opportunity and deserved red card for the French defender. Former Borussia Dortmund striker Chiro Immobile sent Neuer the wrong way from the resulting, spot kick, and the resulting penalty, actually left Bayern needing a win at the Allianz Arena on the 5th of March to actually progress to the quarterfinals, right? Again, remember last time Bayern Munich failed to do so was when they lost to, which was like way back over a decade or so ago. So, those records still need to be kept intact because, look, we look at the key stats from this, right? Bayern now have lost a round of 16 first leg encounter for the first time since that, 1-0 defeat in 2012 to FC Basel, right? Before they actually went on to win 7-0 at home. And Harry Kane was stopped from scoring for only the 9th time in 28 competitive starts for Bayern Munich. Indeed, Bayern Munich did not even have a single shot on target, right, from 17 shots. And the two-time Champions League winner, Thomas Müller made his 147th appearance in the competition, an ongoing record for a German player. And we saw Bayern beat Lazio once upon a time 6-2 on aggregate in the 2021-2022 Champions League round of 16, winning 2-1 at home and then 4-1 away in their only previous meetings with the Roman club. And the 6-time Champions League winners have advanced beyond the last 16 in 12 of their last 14 seasons. So remember, history does speak for Bayern Munich, ladies and gentlemen. And don't get too carried away by this defeat for the German giants. They will be back, trust me. At the Allianz Arena, they will bounce back from this defeat. They will. They have the character. They certainly know how to win in big games. They know Champions League is in their DNA. So they're just like Real Madrid and Manchester City, right? It's a slow start, but they will bounce back pretty soon. Best believe. And I hope you guys literally enjoyed all these videos, man. I hope you guys enjoyed my my take on my perspective on the Champions League round of 16 fixtures. We'll also chat more on the Europa League as well as the UEFA Conference League, as well as the fact that the return of PSL does start on Friday evening, with SuperSport taking on Stellenbosch FC at the Lucas Masterpieces Moripe Stadium in Pretoria, right? And we're also waiting for the big one, the big clash, just a few kilometers away from there, at Loftus Versfeld, where Mamelodi Sundowns take on Orlando Pirates in the big one, in the pick of the weekend's clashes, right? And on Saturday afternoon as well. So we'll be in touch with that one. We're going to do a build-up and a discussion with regards to those games, right?